All right. We got already 5 people on the line and plenty of people in the chat. How's everybody doing tonight? So glad you guys could all join us today on this Tuesday evening, the day after week 1 of college football ended. Let's see who we got on. We got Emperor of Rome. Always happy when you're with us. Glad you're able to make it tonight. Justin TYH or TYH. Go Utes. He's happy to be here, and we're happy to have you. Same for Legalized Quack. Good hearing from you today on our week 1 recap video. I'm sorry about what happened to Oregon this weekend, man. That was just a brutal loss. A brutal loss. One that the Ducks should have won. But they're going to bounce back. They'll beat Nevada this week. Should beat Nevada this week. And hopefully run the table in the Pac-12. But glad you're with us tonight. And, of course, DM, always happy when you're with us as well. And I really appreciate that comment there. Best college football show in the nation. Well, I don't know quite about that, but I will take that compliment. I will not argue with you on that one at all. So thank you all for joining us. I'm sure a couple other people will be coming into the chat and the stream here fairly soon. People are coming and going, but make sure as you're coming in, you hit that like button. That helps out our analytics more than you guys know. So that does wonders for us in helping other people find our channel and hopefully trying to make this the best college football show in the nation. So once again, thank you all for joining us. If you haven't already, you saw our week 1 recap video. We just posted that probably a couple hours ago, and that really recapped this entire week 1. I mean, it was a wild week of college football, even though by some people would say it wasn't. You know, a couple of years ago, I think it was 2016, they were hyping it up as the best opening weekend ever. You know, we had Alabama and USC, LSU, Wisconsin, Houston, Oklahoma. So some great headliner games, but not all of those panned out to be great. Yeah, Wisconsin pulling off that upset over LSU was great. Yeah, Houston's upset over Oklahoma was great. But this one had upsets that didn't really involve ranked teams. And that was what got me. That's what got us on our record. We went 46-9 this week straight up. And a lot of those losses, as you may have heard if you watched our recap video, came from just upsets. Mostly from the Mountain West. Mostly from teams that were unable to hold a lead, such as Purdue and Florida State. But nonetheless, it was a wild week. And we'll run through that here in a minute. Kind of some of the highlights of the games and some of the biggest moments of this past weekend, all 5 days. And then we'll start taking your calls and your questions. This live stream is going to run anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half. So I'm going to go through the chat a couple more times before we dive into the bulk of that. Emperor of Rome, I appreciate that trivia there. Talking about the Utes a second ago. Even if the Utes are mediocre, never forget, it could always be worse. You could go and be the worst team in Division III football and go 0-10 like the Crown College Storm did last season, losing by 37 points to a winless Wesleyan team. Yeah, that's pretty bad. Even though it's just D3, that's pretty rough. So, yeah, just know that you can always be better than the Crown College Storm. The Marshall 25-25. Will Army be a tough matchup for Michigan? We're gonna get to that here pretty soon. But yes, you would expect Army to be a tough out for Michigan. But if you watched Army's game against Rice, they struggled mightily against the Owls, only winning 14-7 and needing a touchdown late with just a little under 4 minutes left to pull away from them. And I don't know if that shows how much Army struggled without Darnell Woolfolk and Bateman as their defensive coordinator, or if that is credit to Rice and how much they've improved in a year. But I'm going to go with the first one and say that Army is really missing some of their top guys and top coaches and playmakers from that magical season they had last year. So up against Michigan, a team that struggled off the bat against Middle Tennessee, ended up winning by 19 points. I think Army's going to have to be able to pass the ball in this game because Michigan did not allow many rushing yards in that game. And, of course, we're going to break that down in our Week 2 predictions video that will come out later this week. If you signed up for our newsletter, you would see our entire schedule, every day, everything that we're going to post. So make sure you're not missing out on that, unless you just like surprises and you just want to be surprised every time you visit our page. But nonetheless, we will really go into deeper detail on that game, the Marshall. But yes, I think it will be an interesting matchup and will certainly be a close game for at least a half. And Legalized Quack, of course, stealing my thunder there, is exactly saying that they were out of sorts against Rice, way closer than it should have been. Colton Campbell, do I still project Arizona beating Texas Tech? We do prediction changes and we'll make those prediction changes. We'll announce those here on YouTube and on Twitter closer to time. Right now, yes, but that could change. That absolutely could change. I think they face off next week, so week 3. And if by that point I want to change that, then I will. But right now, we're going to stick with that. Nicholas Thompson, glad to have you in the chat. Hope everything's going well. Same for you, Ryan McCormick. Always happy to have you as well. And I did watch the Oklahoma State game, and that's a great segue into what we're talking about right now. So before we start taking your calls, we're just going to run through some of the bigger moments of this past weekend, from Thursday all the way to Monday, which concluded last night with Notre Dame's victory over Louisville. And I will say this: if you did not watch that game, you missed out. Because while Notre Dame did beat the Cardinals by 18 points, Louisville and Scott Satterfield looked much better than they did last year. And I was a little nervous, thinking, all right, Satterfield did great things over at Appalachian State, but how quickly can he transform this Louisville program that went 2-10 last season? How quickly could he do that, and especially up against the number 9 team in the country in Notre Dame? Well, for the entire first half and for about halfway through the third quarter, Louisville looked like a team that could upset Notre Dame. Turnovers and the inability to capitalize off of turnovers themselves was the downfall for Louisville. But nonetheless, scoring 17 points, creating some turnovers, the offense looked so much better than it did under Bobby Petrino's reign last year. So Scott Satterfield's on to something. Louisville, we had them at 2-10. Expect them to do a little bit better than that now after seeing that performance against Notre Dame. But Thursday night, of course, kicked off with a couple of interesting games. Cincinnati beating UCLA for the second straight year. Chip Kelly getting his 10th loss at UCLA. And that's even crazier to think that in his 4 years at Oregon, he only had 7. So in less than 2, he's only been at UCLA for a full season and 1 game. So 13 games, he has lost 10 of his 13 games. Whereas at Oregon, I believe he coached in 53 and went like 46-7. That's an unbelievable statistic. And obviously not the start that UCLA wanted in a year that many thought they'd be able to bounce back and maybe fight for a spot in the bowl game. So we saw that one. Minnesota survived an FCS power in South Dakota State. That was a very close one. The Golden Gophers were a team that many had as a potential Big Ten West title contenders, Big Ten West division winners. And here they come out in week 1 and looked very unimpressive against South Dakota State. Now credit, South Dakota State is one of the better teams in the FCS. They're the number 3 team in the FCS to be exact. So that's something to keep in mind. But still, a team that was getting so much hype and returned the most production out of any team in college football only could manage to beat South Dakota State by 7. A little bit of a cause of concern for the Golden Gophers. And then, of course, the Holy War concluded that Thursday night. Didn't get to finish the entire game because of the rain, but it didn't matter. BYU wasn't coming back. Utah won that game 30-12, 9 straight over the Cougars. Their winning that game was the 100th meeting of the Holy War, so an impressive victory for Utah. And that game really showed me they are legitimate contenders in the Pac-12, and for some, including the great Lee Corso, a college football playoff contender. So something to keep in mind as well. Cruz Madrid, we're glad to have you in here with us. And MG20, we're glad to have you in here with us as well. And I'll answer all y'all's questions here in a second before we start actually taking your live calls and hearing what you guys have to say about week 1. How did your team do? Who were you impressed with? Who were you not impressed with? And what do we have to look forward to in week 2? Friday night was kind of another boring night for some, although I will say that the highlight of my night came when Nevada upset Purdue. This is a Purdue team, once again, that, lost a lot of starters, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Only returns basically Sindelar and Rondale Moore. Up by 17 points. 17 points. And they allowed them, in the third quarter, I should add. This was like a first quarter lead. Less than half the game remaining to play. And Nevada battled back, won the game on a 56-yard field goal. 56 yards. To clinch the win over Purdue, and that kicker got put on scholarship. And it was Talton got put on scholarship. So I was super happy for him. What a moment for him. Didn't even know he was going to be the starting kicker until that morning. And went out there and drilled a 56-yarder to lift their team to victory. A 17-point comeback over a Power 5 opponent, and a good one at that. On the goal line, we're glad to have you here. Always happy when you're joining with us, and I hope things are going well over on your page. Friday night also concluded with Wake Forest escaping Utah State, so another impressive performance out of the Mountain West, scoring with 1 minute and 8 seconds left to beat the Aggies 38-35. So the Mountain West, if you signed up for our newsletter or maybe you watched our Week 1 recap, I hope you've done both. You saw where not only in the newsletter but also on our video that we have the Mountain West trending up. The Mountain West is going mightily in the right direction. They went 9-3 as a conference this week. 4 wins of those 9 wins came in against Power 5 opponents, and their only 3 losses came to respectable opponents. Colorado State falls to Colorado by 21, although that game was much closer than the final score indicated. Then you had Fresno State nearly going on the road and upsetting USC, who unfortunately just lost JT Daniels for the season. And then there was one more. It just blanked on me now. The other Mountain West loss. Oh, of course, Utah State. As we mentioned, Utah State and Wake Forest. So 3 losses, all to Power 5 opponents, and respectable ones at that. So that's something to kind of keep in mind as we're going through. And the SEC, on the other hand, we'll talk about that. That's kind of the bulk of what we're going to talk about here on Saturday. Anybody out there that's an SEC guy, and I know we've got a handful out there, what happened, guys? What happened? I get comments all the time saying that I'm a SEC homer. I'm a Bama homer. I'm a Georgia hater. I don't know why people would ever think that, because, of course, we are very unbiased here. At least we try to. But nonetheless, why SEC? You go, I think it was 8-4 this week. Of course, we're not counting the Georgia-Vanderbilt game because that was an interconference game. 8-4, and you're getting upset left and right by teams they should have beat. We'll start with Ole Miss, who fell to Memphis. And that game, not one that I think Ole Miss should have won. I don't think that's a game that Ole Miss was expected to win. Memphis favored in every single game they play this season. I don't think Ole Miss was expected to win that game, but nonetheless, still lost to them. I think it would have been better for Ole Miss had they gotten beat bad by Memphis. But to fall by 5 showed they could have won that game. And only mustering up 10 points against that Memphis defense, that's a cause of concern for the Rebels. And, of course, we have the greatest SEC game maybe in history coming up here between the mighty Arkansas Razorbacks and the Ole Miss Rebels this Saturday night. Whew, that's going to be a barn burner. Let me tell you what. But nonetheless, that was an embarrassing performance for the Rebels. You saw South Carolina get beat by North Carolina and the return of the Mac Brown returning to coach for the first time since 2013. North Carolina was supposed to have a major rebuilding year under Mac. So many young players, so much inexperience. And here they come in and defeat Jake Bentley and Rico Dowdle and Tavian Feaster and this entire wide receiver corps for South Carolina. And what was supposed to be the best defense under Will Muschamp at South Carolina. And North Carolina said, we don't care. We're going to win. And they did, 24-20. Emperor of Rome stealing my thunder once again. He blames everything on the Tennessee Volunteers, and I'm sure Emperor of Rome, as an SEC guy, obviously an Alabama fan. As an Alabama fan, you had to take a little bit of pleasure in seeing Tennessee lose like that, but you also, as a guy that supports the SEC, probably hated seeing an SEC team lose to the Sun Belt and seeing the conference get so much criticism. And Tennessee was a 25-point favorite going into their home opener against Georgia State, who went 2-10 last year, never beaten a Power 5 opponent, and they came in and beat Tennessee 38-30 in a year that Tennessee was supposed to take a pretty good step forward under Jeremy Pruitt in year 2. And that's not going to happen anymore. People are already calling for him to leave. I don't know if I'm going to go that far yet, but if he continues to fail miserably, especially in SEC conference play, I would do even better. Week 2 against BYU this Saturday. They fall to them at Neyland Stadium. He might as well write his ticket out of Knoxville, because I don't think Volunteer fans want to put up with that anymore. And I don't blame them. I do not blame them. Unbelievable stuff happening in the SEC. Wyoming out in the Mountain West. Once again, another Mountain West opponent taking care of business, beating Missouri. Missouri was a team that many thought would go 8-0, 9-0 going into that Georgia game. Now that they have Kelly Bryant coming in at quarterback and in what was supposed to be a super potent offense, and like South Carolina, one of the better defenses Barry Odom has had, and they go out to Laramie and fall to the Cowboys. Once again, an extremely young game, a young team. Credit to Craig Bowl, though. I mean, God, he's won just about everywhere he goes. He wins it. He wins at North Dakota State. He wins at Wyoming, and he just pulled off a huge win for the Cowboys that, with that performance, should get them to a bowl game. And I know it's only week 1, but after seeing that performance, I would expect them to win plenty of Mountain West games to get to bowl eligibility this season. So it was just an embarrassing week for the SEC and an extremely impressive week for the Mountain West. I will say this, like we said in our week 1 recap, if you've watched that, teams tend to take the biggest steps forward in between week 1 and week 2. The majority of the teams start slow in week 1. We saw that just about out of every top 10 team there was. We saw that out of teams that struggled in the SEC and the Big Ten. Every conference, there was a team that struggled, did not look good. Because that's the first time they're hitting somebody else. That's the first time they're going up against somebody that's not their teammates. First time they're playing in front of a huge crowd. First time they're playing in a game that matters since the last time they played, whether that was in the postseason or for some teams, the end of November. So, yeah, you're trying to knock the rust off a little bit. You're trying to get through, trying to work out some things. But for some of the elite teams and for some teams that quote themselves to be the best in the nation and in the best conference in the nation, sometimes that's just not acceptable. But expect a lot of these teams that struggled in week 1 to look like a completely different team come week 2. And I can promise you on that. So that's something to keep in mind as we move our way closer and closer to this Friday night, which will kick off week 2, but also the bulk of the games being played on Saturday. All right, so I want to go through some of these comments real quick, and then we're going to put the number out on the line or out in the chat for you guys, and we'll start taking some calls and seeing what you guys have to say about this. You kind of heard my take on it a little bit here, a little bit through the newsletter, a little bit through the recap video, and now we can kind of talk about it throughout the course of this live stream. And before we do that, though, I do want to say that if you joined our College Pick'em group, I hope you did well. I did not do as well. We only lost 9 games this week, but the majority of those games that we lost were unfortunately in the College Pick'em group, the 10 games that ESPN chose for us to pick. So we have a 3-way tie right now at number 1 in our College Pick'em group, and that is between Eli Rowland, What a College, whoever that may be, and Alex Kidd Awesome. So those 3 guys are tied for first place right now. We're going to give everybody, whoever's in first place, whoever's in a tie for first place, they will always get a shout out at the end of each week to see who can claim the title in our ESPN College Pick'em group. So going through the rest of the comments here, Ryan McCormick, what position did I play in high school? So yeah, we've answered that question a few times. Ryan Nels, come on here. Master Egos asked that before too. I think I saw a comment from you, Ryan, saying you're playing quarterback, and I hope things are going well. Hope your team does well. Hope you're doing well. Make sure you're, quarterback's a tough position. I actually played quarterback a little bit, not for long. I just a tiny bit. Switched over to, as you said, a wide receiver, more of a wide receiver, tight end. We had a very small team. So I played both ways. I played on offense, as I've said before, which was more of a wide receiver, tight end area, a little bit of quarterback. And then on defense, I played more of a, not defensive back like you'd think, but more of a defensive end type of guy. So that's where I played back in the day. And I wish I could still do it, but I'm cool with where we're at right now. Munchie, I hope you're still on here with us. Glad to have you. Saw some of your comments earlier, and I'll definitely address those later. I'll shoot you a response back. But glad you're on here on the chat with us. The Marshall, did Nebraska live up to any hype that they had, and are you concerned with their offensive struggles? Yes, and this will kind of tie in right now with some of the other comments that we've received from Thomas Norman, and who else was it right there? Tef Majai, I'm glad to have you here, man. I hope you did well this week. With our picks. Of course, for those of you that don't know, which I'm sure many of you do, you can still sign up for our expert picks. Went 60% this week, which was not, in my opinion, my best work. I'm not pleased with 60, although that's better than many of the CBS so-called experts out there that are getting paid way more than me to do this stuff, and also better than some of the other sites that I've seen. So I'll take pride in that. But week 2 will be even better. Tef, I hope you played well. I hope you got some good picks in there and were able to benefit from what we released. And of course, our expert picks will be released every Wednesday. Every Wednesday they will be released on our website. So make sure you do not forget that, and make sure you sign up at some point this season. If you haven't, you can do it at any point and still get all the picks that we have to offer. But the Marshall, did Nebraska live up to any hype that they had? kind of. I don't think a 35-21 victory over a pretty abysmal South Alabama team lived up to any hype. Technically, I saw a post that South Alabama technically outscored Nebraska on offense because Nebraska had some defensive touchdowns in there more so than offensively. Yeah, I am concerned with their offensive struggles. So to answer your question, I am. Adrian Martinez is supposed to be the real deal, and I don't think he had a touchdown pass against South Alabama. He had an interception, but I don't think he had a touchdown. But one thing I have to say though is look at Trevor Lawrence, man. I mean, not trying to compare the two, but Trevor Lawrence against Georgia Tech had 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions against a pretty poor Georgia Tech team. Are we going to say that Trevor Lawrence isn't any good? No, we're not. Teams struggle in week 1. You will see a drastic improvement by week 2 for most teams, not all, but for most. And I would expect that out of Nebraska. So I was a little concerned by Nebraska's performance. I expected a little bit more considering all the hype they've been getting and the amount of talent they return. But the game against Colorado will be very telling. If they take care of business on the road against Colorado, a team that came into Nebraska and beat them last year, Nebraska might be legit. If they struggle or even lose to Colorado, forget all the hype. Because if they lose to Colorado, they're not beating Ohio State. They're not going to make the Big Ten championship. And that's just me saying that. That's just my opinion. If you fall to Colorado, who's not a bad team, but nowhere near the competition they will face in the Big Ten, then the hype that Nebraska got was all for nothing. And that is my opinion there. And that kind of answers Thomas Norman's question a little bit. My thoughts on that, well, you heard my thoughts about Nebraska. You've heard me say about Colorado. They beat Colorado State by 21 points. Mel Tucker, great performance. His defense really stepped it up. I was talking to some people during that game, and they said, we predicted that game against the spread. We put Colorado. They were 13.5-point favorites. And they said, well, your pick's going to be wrong because Colorado doesn't have a defense. They cannot stop Colorado State. So if they keep trading points, no way they're going to win. And I said, well, hold on. I said, Mel Tucker is a defensive-minded coach. I said, he's going to come out in the second half, make the adjustments, and I guarantee they'll cover. And that's exactly what they did. 13.5-point favorites. They won by 21. The defense really stepped up. Having said that, how's that relate to Nebraska? Well, the defense ain't half bad, and neither is their offense with Steven Montez and Laviska Shenault. If South Alabama can put up 21 points against Nebraska, then Colorado can certainly do that, especially at home. So there's a very good chance that this game that we see on Saturday could be very similar to the game that we saw between Nebraska and Colorado last season. And that's more concerning for Nebraska than anybody else. Colorado's got nothing to lose, dude. They're not Pac-12 title contenders. They shouldn't be. They got a brand new head coach. Nebraska's a team that's got a lot of hype and expectations here. And if they fall to Colorado on the road, they're done. So I think it's going to be a very, very close game. I think Teff said that he was going to go with Colorado, right? Colorado should cover. And I haven't, like I said, our picks will be released tomorrow. So whether or not that game is in our expert picks or not remains to be seen. If you signed up, great. If you haven't, you might want to do that. But I would slowly right now lean towards Colorado's way with home field advantage and after seeing the way that both teams played in week 1. Colton Campbell, Big 12, undefeated in week 1. Absolutely. Went perfect 10-0. Some of those games against really poor opponents, but some of those games not. And had impressive victories in there. So absolutely. Undefeated in week 1. Let's see how they all goes in conference play. You've got legitimate contenders in Oklahoma and Texas. Iowa State barely surviving Northern Iowa, of course, but I think will once again take a major step forward by week 3. They don't play this week. Got a big date against Iowa coming up. But regardless, an undefeated performance and an impressive performance by the Big 12. BW, big-time San Diego State fan. Let's hope my Aztecs can take a step forward. 6 points against Weber State. Yeah. And I tell you what, BW, man, I looked at that spread. Not to me that we're talking all about spreads here, but you're right. Only 6 points against Weber State. I said, San Diego State's only favored by 7. I said, surely they can put up more points than that. I did a little more research and on both teams and said, never mind. Never mind. We're not going to go that route. But you're right. Let's hope they can put up more points down the road. You got a potent running attack. You need some more. You need some better passing. That's your key. Joe, glad to have you on the line. And DM saying he loves the ultra small high schools that play 7-on-7. Well, I love doing I wasn't at an ultra small high school necessarily. We unfortunately didn't play 7-on-7, but just playing 7-on-7 scrimmages or 7-on-7, against other teams, those were always a blast. More to me, those are almost sometimes more fun than they'd be always 11-on-11. You could always do more. It was just pure offense, It's 7-on-7, you're just going to go to town, and it wasn't like a legit game. So I did enjoy those a lot. Let's see here. Eli Arbeza. So good to have you back. I think we missed you on the last live stream. He picked more Group of 5 over Power 5 wins than most YouTube experts, but chickened out on the Hawaii over Arizona pick. And Eli's always one to criticize me on not picking enough Group of 5 teams, and he proved me wrong this time. A lot of these Group of 5 teams showing up in Week 1, beating some big-time opponents. Georgia State, the Mountain West opponents that we saw, Memphis beating Ole Miss. So, yeah, plenty of Group of 5 love to go around in Week 1. So, Eli, the expert in that realm for now. Definitely, I should bring him on sometime to talk some Group of 5 football. So, Joe, the line actually coming down in the Boise State game against Marshall. The line is down to 11 from 13. Look, all I can say is that Marshall's a good team. But I will say this. If I had to choose that game, whether or not it's on our expert picks remains to be seen, but if I were picking that game, I'm picking Boise State. I'm not fazed by a bit of a line change there between Boise State and Marshall. You're right. They're the clear favorite in the Mountain West. Bachmeier's the real deal, setting a record at Boise State for the most passing yards from a first-time starter for the Broncos, over 400 yards against Florida State in Tallahassee. The opening game for Boise State at home was against Marshall, a team that dropped 59 points against VMI. But I'm not too worried about that spread change, that line change. I like Boise State in that game. They are the clear-cut favorite in the Mountain West, as you mentioned. Could be a clear-cut favorite to get to a New Year's Six bowl game, assuming Central Florida or Cincinnati or someone like that does not get in there. But yeah, they're the real deal. They are absolutely the real deal. So I'm not too fazed by that. Looking through the rest here, got a lot of people on the line here. 18 right now. So, guys, if you're coming in, if you have been here, if you haven't hit that like button for us, that's going to help out our analytics so much. So, please hook us up with some of those. I want to make sure I'm not missing any major comments to the rest of this right now. But I think we're good to go. Let's start taking some calls, guys. Zach Hodge, we're glad to have you. And, of course, Comic Dude, of course, always glad to have you as well. Always glad to have you as well. Hope you're doing well. Hope the band performance went well on Saturday Friday. And I'm very glad that Rutgers was able to pull out a win over UMass, snapping that nation's longest losing streak. So hopefully it looked promising. It looked unpromising at the beginning, but they ended up racking up some points there towards the end. I think it was 47 straight points or something like that to clinch the win over UMass. So hopefully things will continue to go well for Rutgers. North Texas at SMU. I haven't looked at their spread yet, but I will say that North Texas at times looked unimpressive to me. They looked fine. Mason Fine looked great for the most part, but at times looked unimpressive in their season opener, while SMU came here to Jonesboro and beat Arkansas State in a thriller 37-30. Shane Buechele showed that he was legit for the Mustangs, so I'm going to take a look at their spreads tonight, and whether or not I choose that one remains to be seen, but my initial inclination would be SMU. I like SMU in that one, just across the board. I like Buechele at quarterback. Their defense has a lot of returning starters. Sonny Dykes really showed that here against A-State, kind of pulling out all the tricks. Had a great special teams touchdown as well, but the defense in the second half especially shut down Logan Bonner and came up when they needed it most. They do that against Mason Fine, North Texas. Is a sure-win victory for SMU. So that's my kind of brief take on that game out of the American Athletic versus Conference USA. All right, let's do this right now. Let's get some calls coming in. And, of course, we're still going to address everybody in the chat if you're unable to call in. But the number to call in right now, and like I said, before we do that, calls will be going to be limited to about 5 minutes, give or take. Can't stay on the line for too long. We're trying to get as many callers in as we can today. So just keep that in mind as we're going through this live stream. But 901-297-4545. That is the call-in number to the Gridiron Expert Live call-in show. I'm going to get my charger ready just in case. But we'll be expecting y'all's calls any minute if you're ready to talk some college football. Benjamin Orman, glad to have you. So this guy, Benjamin Orman, was giving me a bunch of crap this season during our normal picks. Glad to have you back. Thoughts on NC State? We'll talk about it here in a second. We're getting a call from Augusta, Georgia. All right, so we've got Drew on the line from Augusta, Georgia. Drew, how's it going?
It's going good. How you doing?
I'm doing all right, man. Thank you for calling in.
So I want to talk about upsets for this week. I got a few in mind that I've been thinking about. One of them might sound crazy, might be a little biased, but it's going to happen. Okay, so the first one I want to ask you about it. What are your thoughts about Cincinnati, Ohio State?
Upset's not going to happen, but that game will be close, and at least for a half or three quarters. And it's an intriguing storyline because of obviously Luke Fickell making his return to Columbus.
I mean, I think Cincinnati could win. I don't think it will. This is one of the games I think possibly could happen. It's not like one of the upsets I really have. I mean, I like Cincinnati. I like Desmond Ridder. I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the group of five right now. Michael Warren, good running back. Cincinnati's got one of the best defenses in the American. I feel like they could compete with them, but I don't think they're going to win the game. I think they'll keep it close. But the one upset I do want to talk about is I do think BYU beat Tennessee. That's what I want to call you about. I want to know what you think about that.
Yeah, so we addressed that kind of earlier on in the show, kind of like obviously Jeremy Pruitt. Really, we didn't expect him to be on the hot seat this early, but after that loss to Georgia State, he is. And if, in fact, BYU does beat Tennessee, that would be back-to-back home losses for Tennessee in an 0-2 start. And Eli's on here on the chat saying that that's not even an upset at this point. But, you know, my take on that game is this. I expect both teams to take a major stride forward. And if you look at across the board, I'm going to go out on the limb here and say that BYU has more talent and experience than Tennessee right now. That's my take on it.
Yeah, I think they do have more experience.
Yeah, I believe that. Go ahead.
They're more experienced too for this game. I know that kind of sounds stupid, but I feel like they're just. I mean, I don't think the crowd is going to be as into it as you may think. I don't think there's going to be as many people there. I don't think the fans are going to care anymore. Because I know a few Tennessee fans. Well, once they lose, they're just all crazy. They don't care about nothing. They're just real ignorant, real stupid. So I don't think the crowd's going to be how it should be. I think the teams don't really care. I don't think they're going to be motivated. I think BYU's going to win this game. But the one upset that I'm going to say that is going to happen 100% is UTEP beats Texas Tech. Going on the undefeated campaign.
Yeah, we had the classic UTEP fan on the line. I remember you guys, of course. So look, if UTEP beats Texas Tech, I'm trying to think of what I would do for that. I don't even know what I'd do because it's not going to happen. So I don't have to worry about it. But I know for. Go ahead.
You should do a top 25 poll. You should make a top 25 each week. Your own top 25.
My own top 25?
That's cool to do.
Okay. All right. Well,
you should make your own weekly top 25.
All right. Well, hey, we'll take that into consideration. I know a couple other analysts that do that, so we'll definitely keep that in mind as we move forward. So, not a bad idea. Thank you for the insight, man.
All right.
All right. All right. So that was Drew, all the way from Augusta, Georgia. Not a bad idea to do our own top 25. I know our good friend over at Mark Rogers, he does his own, the top 25 that makes sense. Maybe we'll take a little bit of our own stab at something similar to that. Not a bad idea. Garden City, New York. Getting a call all the way from across the country. That's what I'm talking about. All right. So we got Comic Dude on the line, and this is the kind of guy I like to see. How's it going?
I'm good. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing good, man.
All right. That's good. thanks for the shout out earlier. Yeah. So it was a fun win. The second quarter was a lot of fun. So first quarter I wanted to gouge my eyes out. But other than that, it was a fun experience to get back into the groove of things.
Yeah, well, no, absolutely. I was keeping up with it. I wasn't watching the game in too much detail. I watched a little bit of it, but I was nervous for you guys. I really was. 21-7 at the end of the first quarter. I was like, oh my God, this is gonna happen. This is happening. But
like I texted my mother, like she was at the game as well. I'm like, oh Jesus, and she's like, Rutgers is gonna need Jesus.
that's a bit of an understatement, but hey, after getting down 21-7, I'm looking at the stats here. I mean, yeah, 41 straight points. So that was extremely impressive for them. And I know it was just UMass, but for Rutgers to be able to do that, to rattle off 41 straight points after not really having much of an offense last year, that has to be a sign of progress and kind of a little bit of a positive sign going forward.
Yeah, it's got to start somewhere. And hey, like, I think the over-under was like 55 total points, and we combined to like 69 points. So nice, I guess.
Yeah. I saw the comments in there.
Oh yeah, I just had to say that.
Yeah, I caught all those. Yeah. But no, I was looking at it. I've been talking to DM as well. Obviously, a good Rutgers fan, a big Rutgers fan, and they've got a big date against Iowa coming up on Saturday. And then
I would like to talk about that a little bit. Like, I don't think anybody will cover. Unfortunately, I won't be at that game. But what are you going to do?
Yeah, obviously not going to be a big Rutgers crowd there, but I do think that after seeing this performance against UMass, that as I was telling DM earlier, if you had the chance to hang in this game for at least a half or three quarters, or put up a decent amount of points, then you have a very solid chance at gaining not respect from other people, but showing that this team is heading in the right direction. And then you come home after that to face up against Boston College, and I know they just beat Virginia Tech, but if you fare off well against Iowa, there is that chance for an upset win over Boston College.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I will say this, on top of that, I know some people were probably thrilled to see it, some maybe not, but the bench Sitkowski and start Carter, that was the way to go.
Yeah, look, a redshirt year might be the best thing in the world for him. Like, we all want him to be the quarterback of the future, but like he needs more development time. He wasn't ready.
Right. I agree.
I don't want to trash him.
Right. Well, hey, I mean, Carter's giving you guys the best chance to win right now because Sitkowski obviously wasn't able to get the job done last year, and I think the score against UMass could have been a little bit closer had he been the starter the entire time in this game.
I mean, the thing about UMass, we could have just ran the ball 50 times and we would have gotten somewhere. Like, we have the FBS leader in rushing touchdowns. Isaiah Pacheco, learn the name, look for the face. He's a dark horse Heisman candidate.
All right, there we go. All right. But he did have a good performance. Like I said, looking at the stats here, 20 carries, 156 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Now the question is, can he do that against a team like Iowa or Boston College? That's where it will get real.
Depends more on the offensive line and the passing game. If those two things can open up and be respectable, then the running game could do wonders with just a little bit of space.
Right. No, I hear that, man. Like I said, the highlights that I saw and the bits and pieces I saw, he was able to do a lot with a little. So hopefully he can do that in conference games as well.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, hey, Rutgers are on the right track, man. And are you going to get to travel down for that Iowa game?
Like I said, probably not. I didn't get selected, but I'm a little bummed out over it. But I'm not going to be able to go to the Michigan game either. Penn State's up in the air.
Okay, well, hey, hopefully we'll get to travel to that Penn State game. That would be a pretty cool environment to be at.
Yep.
All right, man. Hey, thank you for calling in. Go Rutgers, and hope things continue to go well for you up there.
Cheers, man.
Yeah, you got it. All right, so that was our good man, Comic Dude 45. Always a blast when he's able to call in. Always enjoy hearing from him. Member of the band up there with the Scarlet Knights. So he's getting a first-hand view of everything going on with the Scarlet Knights football. So once again, Comic Dude, if you're still there, thank you for calling in. Always enjoy hearing from you. So we're getting a bunch of comments here in the chat, and I'm going to take a look at them. And the next guy that calls in, we'll put him on hold for a second so we can address all of these because we've got a lot. Some don't need addressing, some do. But Joe, which team do I need to have one more game from? Which team do I need to see one more game from? Whether that's in terms of just kind of buying into their hype or not, and especially when it comes down to betting on the spread. Let's see. Or before I might have been wrong. One team before I decided I might have been wrong. His is Mississippi State, and he thinks the world is Nebraska. Well, yeah, Nebraska is a cop-out answer. An unimpressive performance against South Alabama. They got a legit test now against Colorado. I would like to say I got a lot of teams, Joe, that I would love to look at one more time and say, okay, that team's legit, or I was right on that team, or, man, I was definitely wrong. Louisville's one of them. And I want to see them play against another tough opponent. They played well against Notre Dame last night, but I want to see Louisville play up against another tough team, whether that's in the ACC or out of conference. I don't have the schedule memorized for them. But I don't want to see them in one more FCS game. I want to see them play a team like Florida State, Virginia, someone like that. And if they play well in that game like they did against Notre Dame, or even beat that team, then I'll know that I was definitely wrong when it came to Louisville. Maybe Kentucky as well. Only beat Toledo by 14 points. They have a strong performance against Florida. Well, then maybe I was wrong. I only have them going 6-6 this year because I do expect them to take a major step back. Although I will say Terry Wilson's passing game looked much improved against Toledo. And I know it's just Toledo, but that is a sign of things to come, considering that they might have to rely a little bit more on the pass game after losing Benny Snell. Let's see what else we have here. Tef has Texas A&M. Upset alert. A&M. Upset alert. He's calling it. He's booking it. Deep Barat saying A&M has no chance. Clemson's at home. Death Valley is where dreams go to die. Look, all I have to say about that, and that's obviously going to be one of the games of the week. And if you, of course, are unaware of that, it's a new segment we have, our Game of the Week analysis, where we will take the biggest game of the week, maybe two sometimes, in a scenario like this, where we will break that down into deeper detail, analyze it, give you our take on it, a much detailed take and more thorough take than you would get on like a weekly predictions video. Because we have 5 games to do where we could just focus on one specific game on these Game of the Week videos. Last year, Texas A&M only lost by 2 in College Station. And that was, of course, before Trevor Lawrence really emerged. He played a little bit in that game, but Kelly Bryant was the biggest difference maker on offense for Clemson. Yes, a lot of that defensive line for Clemson is gone. They played a major role there, but keep in mind that Kellen Mond threw for over 400 yards last year in College Station. So while I don't think maybe the A&M can go in there and beat Clemson straight up, I do think they can maybe cover the spread in this game because Trevor Lawrence did not look that impressive in Week 1 against Georgia Tech. Now, once again, can't stress it enough, teams will take a drastic step forward in a span of 1 week, especially from Week 1 to Week 2. Many coaches will tell you that. You see the biggest change in a team from Week 1 to Week 2. You don't see a bigger change down the road. Maybe for some teams it might come after a bye week, but not always. He didn't look that good. ETN looked really good. And that's the unfortunate thing for any team going up against Clemson. You know, we talk about keys to the game sometimes. It's, if you take away the running game, then they're going to struggle. They're going to force them to win the game through the air. Take away the pass game and force them to win through the run. Clemson, you take away one, the other one's just as dominant. We're getting a call from Little Rock, Arkansas. We're going to put them on hold for a second. Hey, Nick, we got you on the line. We're going to put you on hold for 1 second, all right?
All right, bro.
We got Nicholas Thompson coming in from Arkansas. We're going to get to him in 1 second. Just want to hit the rest of the comments here. Tef adamant, not just Texas A&M going to cover the spread, but that they're going to roast Clemson. I don't know if I'm going to go that far on that one. Now, Deep Barat, I'm not going to say he's dumb as rocks. I will say Tef knows exactly what he's talking about. I've talked to him many times about football, about these games, both spread and straight up. He does know what he's talking about. And I guarantee that if Texas A&M somehow blows Clemson out of the water, then he's going to look like a freaking genius when he comes back to our next live stream. But I will say that I will stick with Clemson to defeat Texas A&M in Death Valley. If the game was in College Station, I might be picking a trendy upset pick there. A&M's ranked 12th for a reason. They're the real deal. They just have a very tough schedule to go along with that talent. Eli, whose seat is hotter, Willie Taggart or Jeremy Pruitt? Willie Taggart's by far. Now, while Jeremy Pruitt's lost to Jeremy Pruitt's loss to Georgia State was not ideal. We knew Tennessee was not going to be that dominant this year. Same can be said for Florida State. Both coaches went 5-7. Both coaches lost their week 1 game. But I think there were higher expectations at Florida State than there are at Tennessee. And Tennessee fans might fight me on that. I know Tennessee fans want to get back to the dominant ways that they used to have back in the late 90s. Unfortunately, that's not the case. I mean, you got to get out of that. It's been over 20 years. Work with what you got. Be in the present. Live in the moment. Don't dwell on the past because it's not there and it ain't coming back. But Willie Taggart is certainly on the hot seat, more so than Jeremy Pruitt. Higher expectations there. Boise State, a good team out of the Mountain West. You can't blame them for necessarily the loss, but think about it. Florida State just recovered that fumble. I'm sure many of you have seen that highlight where you had 2 guys there just trying to scoop up the football and couldn't do it. I mean, I could have a toddler go out there and scoop up that football better than that Florida State defense could. And I'm just being flat out honest with you. It's absolutely embarrassing. No doubt Willie Taggart's on the hotter seat than Jeremy Pruitt, but both seats are on fire. Let's see what else. See what else we've got here. Munchie, the top 3 quarterbacks in the Big 12, and we're about to get to Nicholas here in a second right after that. Sportsman ranked him. Sam Ehlinger 1, Jalen Hurts 2, Charlie Brewer 3 as his top 3 quarterbacks in the Big 12. That's a tough call for me, man, but I'm going to tell you what. Many people are going to say Ehlinger at 1. After the performance I saw from both quarterbacks, it's close for me. I'm giving Hurts the edge. Hurts is the number 1 quarterback in the Big 12 for me, followed closely with Sam Ehlinger. And then up there at 3, you could throw plenty of quarterbacks in there because there's so much talent. You've got Alan Bowman. You've got Charlie Brewer. You've got Brock Purdy. I think those are your top 3 quarterbacks that could fight for the 3rd spot for your top 3 quarterbacks. Based off of what I saw on Saturday, it's Alan Bowman. That's who I've got in at number 3. That's after what I saw on Saturday. But none of those teams really played legit tough teams. I think as the season goes on, you might see that it could be Brock Purdy in terms of game management, in terms of the team that he has around him. But those are my top 3: Hurts, Ehlinger, and then Bowman at 3. Bowman the showman, as Munchie will call him. All right, we're going to talk to Nicholas real quick, all the way from Jacksonville, I believe. Nicholas, how's it going?
I'm doing good, man.
All right, man. So what's on your mind? What you want to be talking about today?
Oh, man, what happened to Tennessee, man? I saw that, and I was like, you got to be kidding me, right? I mean, it was embarrassing. It was sad. Fans left during halftime.
Yeah, and
it wouldn't shock me to see Jared Cook get fired if it was to BYU. I mean, I saw the players. It looked like they didn't want anyone to play football.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. It was a very uninspired game. And Nicholas, remind me, correct me if I'm wrong, but you are a Georgia fan, right?
Yes, sir.
That's what I thought. So I'm sure. Okay, let me ask you this: do you support the entire?
I was happy when they lost.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm sure you were pretty happy with seeing that loss there, right? Yeah. But to answer your question, man, I don't know. I really don't know. You're right. It looked very uninspired football. I think, I can't remember who it was. I think it was Teth a second ago talking about the Iowa State Northern Iowa game. Iowa State, he said, kind of took Northern Iowa for granted, took them lightly. And I think that's kind of what Tennessee did as well. I think, look, I'm not a Tennessee fan by any means. I'm not a Tennessee hater by any means. But I've noticed from what I've seen, Tennessee players and fans tend to be some of the more arrogant in the entire nation.
Believe me, man, I hear it on that radio show. They're going 11-0. They're going 10-2. I'm like, Tennessee fans need to worry about beating South Carolina and beating Kansas before anything else.
Right, exactly. Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. I mean, and look, teams do that. Teams happen to do that. Everybody wants to believe that their team is going to be a national title contender, when you have to be realistic and realize that's not going to be the case. And it's certainly not going to be the case for Tennessee. Wasn't last year, not this year. It hasn't been the case for them since, like I said, the late 1990s. But what happened against Georgia State was, like I said, I think they took them for granted. I think the hype, even though there was very little, but I think the hype kind of got to them, similar to kind of what happened with Nebraska. They were getting hyped up the same way Tennessee's getting hyped up as a team that was supposed to win maybe 7 or 8 games this year and get to a bowl game in Pruitt's second year. So I don't think they were prepared. I don't think they were prepared mentally. I don't think they were prepared physically. And the dangerous thing about facing teams from the group of 5, especially poor ones like Georgia State, or facing teams from the FCS, is that those teams have nothing to lose. Those teams come into that game obviously hyped to be playing in such a big environment, usually on national television, and having the opportunity to defeat a historic and
that was their first actually SEC win. They haven't ever beaten the Power 5 before that.
Well, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Really shocking.
Yeah, they had never beaten a Power 5. That was Tennessee's first loss in a home opener since 1983 as 25-point favorites. But that's what I'm saying is these teams that play these guys don't have anything to lose. Georgia State had nothing to lose. Northern Iowa had nothing to lose. They know when they come into this game that we're expected to lose. Hell, we got paid money to come into this game and lose. So let's throw everything out the window and give it our all and see what happens. We'll take risks. We'll go for it on 4th down. We'll pull some fakes. We'll do everything possible to get our win here. And that's exactly what they did. And as Sean Elliott said, he goes, I loved what he said after the game in the locker room. He said, the SEC, they say it just means more. He goes, today it meant more to us. And I absolutely believe that. I don't think Tennessee, as you said, they looked uninspired and really did not care how this game was played. Reminded me a lot of Arkansas last year. Arkansas looked very uninspired playing football. Lost, Colorado State, lost to North Texas. Both upsets on their part. So Tennessee, arguably the worst team in the SEC now, and Pruitt, no doubt, on the hot seat. No, not anymore. I had them going to a bowl game. And like I said, I want to watch how they play against BYU. And I'd like to see how they play the week after that. But if they lose to BYU especially, they will not be going to a bowl game. If they win that, they have a chance to salvage a potential 6-6 season. But I do not expect them to go bowling.
Hey, man, what's your also opinion on Florida State? I'm not the leader of Willie Taggart. I think he's in over his head. But it's always been one person for the city. They don't never ever seem to fix it. It's their offensive line. And everybody talks about it. It ain't just us. ESPN, everybody talks about the offensive line, which is offensive line. And it's been like ever since James Winston. And they just cannot seem to fix that.
You were saying their offensive line? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, their offensive line.
Yeah, right. Well, I'll say this. Florida State, kind of like Tennessee, is a team that always gets a lot of hype and has sky-high expectations every year. And from the fan base, that's understandable because for years and years and years, they were dominant teams in the ACC, a national title contender, and they expect that. I agree with you that I think Willie Taggart's in over his head. The guy has a losing record in his entire coaching career. He has a losing record. He's coached at South Florida and Oregon and Western Kentucky, and now at Florida State, and he has a losing record. Why Florida State hired him, I have no idea. But you're right. Along the offensive line, it's pitiful. It's pitiful. And they're obviously we saw that last year when they faced off against Clemson, who had arguably the best defensive line in the entire nation. How bad it was. It was bad again this past Saturday against Boise State. And it appears to me that no one on that coaching staff has a clue of what they're doing or really has any means to fix those issues. Kind of same with what Willie Taggart was saying this offseason. People were criticizing him for the issues at quarterback and the questions they had at quarterback. And he's like, I got a plan. And I always joked and said that's exactly what a guy without a plan would say because he seems absolutely clueless.
Yeah, he does, man. I mean, like I said, I'm not a believer. What was your take on the Auburn Oregon game? Now do you think Gus Malzahn will actually keep his job if he won that game?
Gus Malzahn, I was watching that game and watching another, and they were talking about coaches on the hot seat. And they said, Gus Malzahn's a guy that will always be on the hot seat. He's never going to be able to get off of it. I think he kind of got his name off of that. He's on the outside looking in on the hot seat list right now. Great win over Oregon. I don't think they deserve to be ranked number 10 right now. I don't think they deserve to be number 10 in the nation right now. But I will say that if they do beat A&M here in a few weeks, if they do beat a team like Florida, a team like LSU. I mean, a lot of those games are on the road for them. So if they were able to take care of business in the SEC against quality SEC opponents, so that means beating A&M, Florida, LSU, someone like that, and not beating a team like Arkansas or Ole Miss, then, yeah, I think his name's off the hot seat. But let's see how they fare in SEC play. Oregon lost that game. Auburn did not win it. Oregon lost that game, much like they did. Oregon should have won the game. Bo Nix was not that impressive, in my opinion. He got the job done through the game-winning touchdown pass, but he was not that impressive. So let's see how they fare in the bulk of their SEC play, and I think that will really determine whether or not, one, Gus Malzahn should remain on the hot seat, and two, if Auburn really deserves to be a top 10 team.
Thank you for taking my comment. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, you got it, man. Thanks for calling in. All right, so that was Nicholas all the way down to Jacksonville, Arkansas, so my home state, of course. Reading through the rest of these comments here, Tef making a very good point for those of you that are bettors. If you don't use our expert picks, USC and Stanford are both starting backup quarterbacks. Now, USC is a definite. JT Daniels done for the season, so they're going to have a backup QB the entire season. And we're getting another call right now. We're going to put them on hold so I can go through the rest of these comments here. So 1 second. All right, Deep Barat, we're going to put you on hold for 1 second, man. All right, so as I was saying, USC and Stanford both going to be using backup QBs. USC definitely, KJ Costello getting hurt in that game against Northwestern, and he was done for the game. Had to rely more on that running game. And of course, unfortunately for Stanford, they didn't have Bryce Love to rely on this time. There's a chance he could be back. I don't think he's going to be back for this USC game. I don't think he's out for the year. It wasn't a season-ending injury. But it was a bad hit to the head that should keep him out of this USC game. So something to keep in mind in a pivotal Pac-12 matchup that has produced classics in recent years, but obviously isn't going to have that same hype, and obviously going to have two of their best players for both teams this Saturday night. So that's unfortunate, but keep that in mind as we get closer and closer to that Pac-12 matchup. Look at the rest of the comments here. McD Sports 4, glad to have you on the line with us. Cyclone Mitch, same way. Glad to have you with us. Better late than never, as I would always say. Just got done with football practice. So hoping that's going well for you, Mitch. And Joe, hopefully he showered. Hey, we're not around him. He can do whatever he wants, man. I mean, hopefully he does at some point tonight. But I'm making sure I'm not missing anything here. Eli saying the SEC East is garbage, so maybe Tennessee still has a slight chance to get to a bowl game. Missouri, South Carolina, and Vanderbilt suck. Kentucky is mediocre. So, yeah, maybe Tennessee can get a win. I say maybe over Kentucky and Vanderbilt. Maybe South Carolina now that Bentley could be out indefinitely, although don't sleep on Ryan Helinski at all. That guy could be a real deal. Only a freshman, but I think he's a good quarterback for the future of South Carolina football, at least for these next couple of years. So keep that in mind as we are watching the rest of the South Carolina season. Tennessee, of course, their season obviously got off to a bad start against Georgia State. And I hate to say it for any team when I say this, but their season will be defined Saturday night when they face off against BYU. If they win that game, their season can still be salvaged. If they lose that game, the season is over. It's a wash. Jeremy Pruitt will be done by the end of that season, and Tennessee is going to continue that rebuilding season. They haven't been the same since the late 1990s, in my opinion. They're going to have to continue to rebuild. If they beat BYU, the season's salvaged. They still have a chance. If they lose, they are done. Absolutely. And our last one right here, before we take Deeper Rod's call, Munchie, what are my thoughts on TCU? They got votes for the top 25. Look, I saw North Carolina getting a vote for the top 25. They got one, and they didn't deserve that. I mean, no team that wins 2 games the year before and beats a mediocre at best team in the SEC deserves a vote to be in the top 25. Some of these AP voters don't deserve the AP voters. And that's just my hot take. Some of those guys do not know what they're talking about. But TCU did not have that much of an impressive performance against Arkansas Pine Bluff, UAPB. So I don't think they should be getting votes for the top 25 right now. Tell me when TCU is able to beat I don't remember who they've got this week, but I think the week after, week 3, they face off against Purdue on the road, I think. So if they beat Purdue on the road, then start talking to me, and maybe they deserve to slip into the top 25. Many are saying this is a bounce-back year for TCU and Gary Patterson. had a disappointing 2018. Usually it's every other year, especially coming off a disappointing year, that TCU rebounds and takes a major step forward. Maybe that can be the case for them in 2019. So if they start off the season 3-0, especially with the win over Purdue, then maybe they deserve to get some votes. And James Scott saying if Tennessee beats BYU, then BYU's season is over. That's not necessarily the case because we have BYU starting the season 0-4 and winning their final 8. The talent is there for BYU. They just had horrible luck drawing 4 straight Power 5 teams, tough Power 5 teams, to kick off the season. So their season's not over if they lose to Tennessee, but it's not going to be the start that they certainly want. Kalani Sitake is the guy that's going to be on the hot seat. All right, so we're going to take Deep Barat's call. Like I said, trying to limit these calls to about, and he's gone. I don't know, maybe he got impatient. I don't know. Either we lost him somehow. We lost Deep Barat somehow. He'll call back in a second like he usually does. Once again, trying to limit these calls to about 5, 10 minutes max, usually around 5, so we can get as many callers in and everybody can try to get involved. Eli, Syracuse's defense looked really impressive against Liberty, and I will say that I was pretty shocked that Liberty was unable to put up any points against Syracuse, not even a field goal, with the offense that they returned, especially led by Stephen Calvert at quarterback. So I expect it's a better offensive performance, and especially with Hugh Freeze as their head coach. But I know having your head coach sitting in a hospital bed in the coaching booth doesn't do your team very much. So that is something to keep in mind as well. But their defense looked strong, and that was, of course, that comment referencing how Syracuse and Maryland are going to be facing off this Saturday. Syracuse defense looked strong against Liberty. Maryland's offense looked unstoppable. And I know they were playing Howard, but 79 points. An impressive performance, especially in Mike Loxley's debut as head coach with the Terrapins. So keep an eye out. I picked Maryland to upset Syracuse back in the preseason, back in the summer when we did our predictions. And I'm going to stick by that for now because I like this Maryland team. Maybe not so much once they get to conference play, but in the non-conference, absolutely. Michael Loxley's got something, and Josh Jackson fits the mold perfectly. Had a great debut with the Terrapins after transferring from Virginia Tech. Things are looking really good for Maryland, and I like them in an upset on Saturday. And McD Sports 4 seems very confident in that. Maryland is balling. Go Terps. We're beating Syracuse. He seems confident, and personally, so am I. DM, I love it. I love it. He's got a bold prediction out there for us. Syracuse will upset Clemson. The game, of course, being in Syracuse. That is probably going to be our game of the week in week 3. We might have 2 games of the week. Who knows? But that is a trendy upset pick. I will say this, though. Their defense looked really good. Trevor Lawrence didn't look that great against Georgia Tech. We'll see how he does against A&M. Syracuse will get lucky if they can get A&M to have a close game against Clemson. If Clemson has to battle it out in Death Valley against A&M, they're going to come in a little bit tired to the Carrier Dome. It's going to be rocking, especially if Syracuse beats Maryland, starting off the season 2-0. But Tommy DeVito did not have a good performance against Liberty. 2 interceptions, no touchdowns. They relied a lot on their run game, which could bode well against a Clemson front 7 that is still strong, but not as strong as they were a year ago. Syracuse beat them 2 years ago, last time they were in the Carrier Dome. Neely beat them last year. Expect another close game, and I like DM. He's going with the upset. Syracuse is going to do it. We're not that bold yet, but it could happen. And I say that a lot. Anything can happen. I mean, for any game. Oh, that team could win, yes. But Syracuse has a much better chance of beating Clemson than they did last year, and probably one of the better chances to upset the Tigers out of any team Clemson will face on their schedule this season. Yes, the Marshall 25-25. I did not see your comment. Let me find it. If I could take one quarterback to go on a game-winning drive in the national championship, I assume, who would it be? One quarterback, game-winning drive. Who am I taking for the national title? You could run down the list of the best quarterbacks in the nation: Trevor Lawrence, Tua Tagovailoa, Jake Fromm, Justin Herbert. I think personally, right now, I would take Tua. Tua is that's a great question. Tef saying it, great question. But I think I would take Tua right now. I saw what he did in the national championship 2 years ago. Tua is a guy that holds on to the ball extremely well. He doesn't turn the ball over that much. He did towards the end of last season. But his ball security is unbelievable. So I would probably take Tua, or I'll even do you one better, kind of a shocker to some, Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts. Why? Because Jalen Hurts is much more mobile than Tua Tagovailoa. We know that. We saw that against Houston on Sunday night. And if I'm on a game-winning drive for the national championship, say starting at my own 20 or 25-yard line, I need a guy that can scramble and make plays outside the pocket. And I'm not saying Tua can't do that, but I need a guy that if the pocket collapses, he can pick up a first down or 15 yards with his legs and has that speed. And I think he can do just that. So I like Tua or Jalen Hurts. Both Alabama products, I know. That's a cop-out answer, maybe. But both have very solid ball security. Tef making another good point. Jalen Hurts is proven. We know that. We've seen him on the biggest stages last year in the SEC title game, a couple years ago in the national championship game. He's a proven quarterback. And I would take one of those two to lead my team for a game-winning drive for the national championship. And Border Bob, quick to throw out 44-16, 44-16. But, let bygones be bygones. I've never met a quarterback that has never thrown an interception in an entire season. Maybe there was. Maybe there was at some point in time, but maybe it was a long, long time ago. But turnovers will happen, but how often will they happen? Emperor of Rome, I know, is very happy with my answer. Let's go through the rest of the comments here. Let's see. Who else do we have? Michael Hogg saying, I do have to ask, I don't know if you've seen the Purdue-Nevada game, but during the replays with a minute left, yes, of course, where, yes, it was a potential, they called it incomplete with about under a minute left. It was kind of a controversial call. Why didn't they show the other view from the Nevada half? Great question. I don't know. I'm not an official. I'm not in the replay booth. I wish I knew. They didn't have some of the best replay. I was watching that game closely as it wound down. Ended up not mattering, of course. Nevada still got the win, but that just would have added an even more dramatic ending. Now I don't know. I don't know why they didn't do that. Sometimes they don't have camera views for that. They should have cameras everywhere. Now they've added sideline cameras, pylon cams. You've got the wire going across the entire field. So they should have a camera just about everywhere so you can have a view from any angle that you want. But I don't know why they didn't do that. And Michael Hogg, again, 2 out of 2 bench to where Majors made the interception. It should have been a Purdue win. That said, when you have 5 turnovers, you're not going to win a lot of football games. Very, very true. Kind of like Nick Rolovich said a couple weeks ago when Hawaii escaped Arizona. Hawaii had 6 turnovers, and he said, if you have that many turnovers, you should not win. But sometimes teams do get lucky. Or sometimes their defense plays well. You have a turnover, your defense prevents the other team from actually benefiting off of those turnovers. It happens. Joe, I did see that big money line move. I saw it across the board. Money line and spread. Syracuse and Maryland. He says lay the 1.5 points and roll with the Cuse. Not Maryland, but the Cuse. Yeah, Syracuse was favored by about 2.5 points in that game at the start of the week. It has shifted gradually to now where Maryland is favored by 2 points. So he's going with Syracuse. Gutsy call there. Like he said, I like that would be another good pick as an upset special, but his gut is going with the Cuse. I don't know yet. I can guarantee you, though, one thing. It's a little sneak peek for you guys out there. That game will, in fact, be on our expert pick. So, once again, if you haven't signed up, make sure you do that. And tell others, man. A lot of these people that have signed up has been word of mouth. You know, a lot of people that I'll get alerts and we'll talk to them. And they've never seen our channel until they get alerted of these expert picks, because people are telling them, hey, go check this guy out, go do this, go do that, go check out the Gridiron Expert, sign up for the expert picks. And so word of mouth helps us out more than you guys know too. So if you've got friends out there that enjoy betting on the spread or just college football content, period, tell them, spread the word, and help them get more college football content, help us build our brand and build our channel, both on the website and here on YouTube. Yeah, the Marshall, some Army quarterback probably hasn't had an interception because they normally don't even throw the ball. Well, that's a good point. You go to the military academies, Navy, Army, Air Force, guys like that. Yeah, maybe they haven't gone without interception because, yeah, they rarely do throw. Although I will say the Army beat Rice on a 17-yard touchdown pass from Kelvin Hopkins. So they're breaking out the pass a little bit more, I think. And if they want to beat Michigan, they're going to have to pass the ball. If they want to upset Michigan on Saturday, they will have to pass. That is almost the only way they will be able to beat them, because they will not be able to beat that Wolverines defense by running the ball constantly. That works against a lot of teams, but it won't work against Michigan. And we're going to be slowly wrapping it up here, guys, as we crack almost the hour 15 mark. I tell you what, time just flies by when you're having a good time. But we'll answer a couple more questions here. Colton Campbell, is Oregon State that bad, or is Oklahoma State a lot better than we thought? And if Ryan McCormick's still on the line, I'm sure he would immediately attest to saying that Oklahoma State's a lot better than we thought. Look, Oregon State put up more points than I thought they would against Oklahoma State. I'll be quite honest with you. They also did that last year when they faced off against Ohio State. They lost, what, like 77-31? So 31 points is great, but you still lost by over 40 points. If you guys have seen Ryan's comments both on one of our previous videos or maybe on this live stream, you saw where Chuba Hubbard, he's saying Chuba for Heisman. And if he keeps up his performance, he will be in the Heisman race very, very soon. Let's see if he can keep it up. But against Oregon State, he had 26 carries for 221 yards and 3 touchdowns. Spencer Sanders, 19 for 24, 203 yards, and 3 touchdowns. First time he's starting for the Cowboys. So I think Oklahoma State is better than we thought. Now, I'm not saying Oregon State is necessarily that bad, Colton. That's not what I'm going to say here. But I have them going 1-11. I don't see them winning many games this year. Horrible start to the Jonathan Smith era. The talent is there. Good quarterback, good running back, good crew of wide receivers. The defense just couldn't get any stops, and that was their problem. We got Deeper Rock calling back in. Like I said, it's probably one of our last callers of the night. All right, Deeper Rock, we lost you last time. What's going on?
Yo, I just wanted to just hear your thoughts and perspective, but also kind of give you a little bit of my input on what I thought was really exciting this past week and heading into this week as well. Obviously, there's a bunch of upsets, right? But I think that more or less, I mean, we were kind of expecting Tennessee to maybe be better than last year, but not drastically better. And that obviously showed versus Georgia State. Interestingly enough, man, there's obviously going to be a lot of hype this weekend around Texas LSU, right? And the line, interestingly, keeps changing back and forth from that game. It was +1 Texas, I think it was last Saturday, and then the games happened, and then heading into this week, a lot of people believe that it's now +5.5 LSU. Not a lot of people believe that the line has changed on several betting websites. It's like 5.5 LSU. And I think that, again, I don't know. I mean, you might have done a game preview on this. You might not have. But I think this game could really and truly go either way. It just depends on who really and truly shows up. Obviously, Texas, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people's opinion, has the better quarterback, and they do have an elite wide receiver core, good running backs. It's a solid offense. But LSU has, in my opinion, what I think is slightly better defensive line for sure, and possibly even a better secondary, even though Texas has a lot of 5-star talent in their secondary as well. So, I wanted to hear your thoughts on that game and your thoughts on the line kind of shifting back and forth and, kind of where you see it.
Yeah, no, great. That's obviously the game of the week, man. I mean, you've got the new AP poll came out today, and it's number 6 going on the road to face off number 9. So a top 10 matchup this early doesn't happen that often. But I'll agree with you in the sense that I agree that LSU. I'm going to go out on the line here. You know, Texas wants to pride themselves as at times as DBU, and I think they actually have shirts now that have DBU, defensive back university. But LSU has the best secondary and the best defensive backs, not just in the SEC but in the nation, and that's my opinion. But I think that's also for many people facts. Just looking at the talent they have, not saying that Texas does not have a good one, but I think LSU owns that edge there. But I agree with you in the sense that, if you looked at the line, for those of you that do bet and, have kept up with that, the line does continue to shift. And like you said, right now it's about LSU favored by 5.5. And I expect it to shift a little bit more, either one way or another, before Saturday comes around. And that's almost a touchdown. That's a 1.5 away from LSU being favored by an entire touchdown. And personally, to me, that feels a little high. People have come out and said that they think this game will be similar to LSU's beatdown of Miami last year. A lot of people were hyping up Miami, thought they'd win, and LSU dismantled them 33-17. I do not think that will be the case this year. Texas showed me, and even though it was just Louisiana Tech, showed me enough. I was afraid they were going to lay an egg, not necessarily lose to Tech, but not perform very well. But they did. The defense showed up. The offense led by Ellinger.
Yeah, the game was 38-0 after 3 quarters.
Right.
38-0, and I know that we only scored 45 on LA Tech, and they did score 14 points towards the end. But it's important to understand the context of those 14 points as well that LA Tech did score. It was after the starters, predominantly what I think is an elite secondary, maybe the best in the country, but that's irrelevant to the point, is that they were all benched in the fourth quarter. In addition to Ellinger being benched, all the starters were gone. I think Texas could have put up 50, 60 points, maybe more even if Ellinger really, was in the game. They just weren't, trying to, I guess, rest him and also waste time in garbage time, right? They just want to end the game and move on to the next week. Whereas LSU, that game versus Georgia Southern, it looks very impressive on the eye test, but I don't think that they rested any of their starters, or they really kind of, just stopped putting the pedal on the gas. So again, it's very hard to really judge off these group of 5 games. But I think that's where the line kind of shifted, is because of that 5.5, like maybe LSU looked a little bit better on the eye test this weekend, and, that is causing people to be, I guess, all of a sudden LSU's heavy favorite or something like that.
Sure. No, I agree. I mean, a lot of people, like I said, for bettors out there, were picking Georgia Southern as kind of that, not upset to win straight up, but they were 27.5-point underdogs. And a lot of people thought that they'd keep the game close, especially with the type of offense they run. LSU held them to 3 points, won, like you said, 55-3. But the biggest takeaway that I have for this game, LSU and Texas, is, and it sounds cliche, but you'll have to hear me out, is obviously it's going to come down to defense in this game. We kind of addressed that at the beginning. But at Texas, not relies, but has one of the better passing attacks, I think, in the nation, one of the better quarterbacks in the entire nation with Sam Ellinger. How will he and Colin Johnson, how will they fare against this LSU secondary, which I truly believe to be the best in the entire nation? And the same can be said for Texas, going up against an LSU passing attack that is the best we have seen from LSU. I think I can't even remember the last time, probably in the past 10 years, if not longer. Joe Burrow, those crew of wide receivers, LSU under Les Miles was a defensive-minded team and relied a lot on the run. When we saw that, you had Darius Geis, you had Leonard Fournette, you had, I think Stephen Ridley was there, Jeremy Hill, guys like that really gave this LSU team a boost at the running game. Now it's kind of shifted. The run game's still there, but they rely a lot more on Joe Burrow, and he is lighting teams up. How will Texas's secondary fare against that potent of a passing attack? So that is something to think about going into this game.
Up an interesting point. I just wanted to kind of comment on LSU's secondary and just get a little bit of perspective and context on that. Is that I'm not saying that LSU's secondary is not elite, because I think they are elite. Maybe I would think among the top 3 secondaries in the country, maybe top 3, top 5 for sure, but around the top 3 range. Can't really distinguish between the top 3 that I can think of the top of my head at this moment. But LSU gave up 32 points to UCF, I believe, and that game was very close towards the end. I mean, yes, I understand LSU won by a touchdown, but again, that was to a UCF team that wasn't, nearly as good as what we thought they would be. And also, LSU also lost to Florida, I believe, on the road as well. So, again, I don't know if being on the road or being at home versus top 10 matchups really matter, but LSU has a very bad track record, even of recent times, against similar type of top 10 matchups when they do go on the road. And their secondary did give up close to 30 points against Florida last year as well. Similar early matchup, I think it was week 4, week 5. I don't know when they played Florida, but it was still very early in the season. So, you're right. I think that it's going to be a very interesting matchup. I don't know if I should really be concerned as a Texas fan if the line all of a sudden shifts or if people really have that sentiment of the line shifting. I personally think it's great because Tom Herman also has the best record as an underdog. Him and Mike Gundy have the best win percentage in wins when they are an underdog, interestingly enough. So who knows, right?
No, it's a very good point. Very good point. Herman, as you mentioned, thrives being an underdog, which, is unbelievable to me. I mean, the teams are going to stay the same, whether they're a favorite, whether they're an underdog. That team is that team, and I know maybe it adds extra fuel to the fire to know that the media in Vegas are picking against you, but he does thrive being an underdog, and that will benefit them. And Texas owns that benefit by getting to be at home. I think if this game was in Death Valley, you would see the line be a little larger than 5.5, and I would feel more confident in picking LSU. I've got LSU winning this game right now. We predicted that back in the summer. But I said it then, I'll say it again, that I expect it to be very, very close. And like you said, LSU's performance against UCF last year, performance against Florida last year, yes, maybe uninspiring, but at times, obviously, they beat UCF. A lot of their people, keep in mind, they had a lot of starters sitting out that game in preparation for the NFL draft. Not saying that's any consolation or any excuse for that performance, but still something to keep in mind. And also against Florida.
That's true, but the same starters that were playing in that game are going to be starters this year playing against Texas. So I see what you're saying, that they had starters sitting up in the NFL, but they're kind of irrelevant to this year's team because they went to the NFL.
Right. No, you're right. You're right. But I really think, after what I saw, and I know it was just Georgia Southern, but after what I saw from LSU in that opening victory against Georgia Southern, while everybody wants to talk more about the defense, which played well, I'm more concerned for Texas going up against the offense. And I think it was James Scott here just a second ago to give you just like another thing about Texas. He's actually on Texas' side here saying that LSU has not seen the type of offense that Texas will bring. And they're right. It's been a while that I think they've seen the type of fast-paced and strong offense that Texas will bring. They beat Georgia with it. They beat Oklahoma with it the first time in the regular season before falling again to them in the conference championship game. While, like you mentioned, LSU did lose to or beat UCF, lost to Florida, lost to Texas A&M in a shootout thriller at the end of the season. They haven't really seen this type of passing attack, even though you could say Alabama kind of had it. Alabama with Tua last year, when they beat them 29-0, was still a fairly balanced team, and certainly is nowhere near the type of team that Texas is. Not saying that Texas is better than Alabama, but in terms of style, they're nowhere near that.
Yeah, that is true. And, interestingly enough, right, this year's Texas team is a little bit different from last year's Texas team. I think, again, this is from what the comments that I've been reading. I've been, obviously, as a diehard Texas fan, I keep up with the team, but this is the best offensive line that Texas has ever had. They have 3 All-Americans. They have 3 first-team, all Big 12 or all ACC. You have 1 grad transfer, Parker Braun, who's going to start on their offensive line. So I think that LSU has a good defensive line. Can they break that barrier that Texas has set up, that wall, to really protect Ellinger, but also protect, possibly, the pass game, give him enough of a pocket to really throw, give him enough space to run. That's where my concern is for LSU. Now, again, I could come off as maybe slightly biased, but, looking at the performance of the Texas offensive line just in the first game, and I'm talking about the starters, because remember, they left the starters
Right.
after the third quarter. After the third quarter, the score was close to 40-0. Texas did not play any of the starters after that. And even then, you could see that they were not able to pressure. Louisiana Tech was not able to pressure, Ellinger or break through that barrier of the offensive line. And among this offensive line of Texas, 2 or 3 of these guys are actually projected to go to the NFL draft, reasonably high, in between the first 3 or 4 rounds. Zach Shackelford, the center. We have, obviously, I mentioned Parker Braun, Samuel Cosme. These are really and truly the best offensive line that Texas has had. And it's going to be interesting to see if LSU can really pressure that. Because if they can, they're going to be in for a very long night in regards to the wide receiver core. As we mentioned, Colin Johnson, but there's also a lot of, other guys who are also, elite blue chip talent in the sense of Devin Duvernay, fastest 40 times in the Big 12, also projected close to the first round, if not second round. Brennan Eagles, etc. So that's that side. Now, when you mention LSU, I agree with you that this is the best offense that LSU has ever had. But it also is going to be interesting to see if they can play well against a good defense. Because we saw, obviously, Alabama game was different because Alabama has a much better defense than Texas, but it's giving up 32. Scoring 40 against UCLA is pretty impressive, actually. But it's going to be interesting. I think that Texas has a good defense. I'm not saying they have a great defense. So what I predict is a shootout. Now, I could be wrong, but it looks to me like both teams are going to score a lot of points in this game.
Yeah, I agree. And we're going to end this call right here, but I'll make sure to address all those points you just mentioned. But I do agree it will be a shootout. And like I said, I'm going to keep touching on it after this. But Deep Rod, thank you for calling in, man.
Absolutely. Have a good one. Cheers.
You too. So like he said, he thinks it's going to be a shootout. And I want to make 2 points on that before we go through the rest of the comments here, before we wrap up this live stream. I said we go somewhere between an hour to an hour and a half, and we're right about the hour and a half mark. But he thinks it's going to be a shootout, and I couldn't agree more. While both teams will boast a very potent defense, both have a very solid offense as well. And I said at the beginning, I said how this team will win, whether Texas or LSU, is going to come down to defense. And when it's a shootout, the defense has to step up. Who's going to win the turnover battle? Who's going to get the stops when you need it the most? One thing that he did mention that I'm going to draw a comparison to is the strength of the Texas offensive line and how he thinks this is one of the best that Texas has ever had and extremely strong. Whether LSU's defensive line can break through that and pressure Sam Ellinger, will they corrupt the pocket? Will they collapse the pocket and force Ellinger to make plays on the run or make enough sacks and make his life miserable in the pocket? That remains to be seen. But I do think you can draw comparisons to what we just saw this past weekend between Auburn and Oregon, where Auburn absolutely owns the best defensive line in the entire nation, and they were going up against the best offensive line in the entire nation with Oregon. Auburn did get through and create enough pressure on Justin Herbert. Although he didn't make any bad throws, they did make him escape the pocket at times. They did get a couple sacks in there. And when they got those sacks and when they got those times where he had to escape the pocket, maybe throw it out of bounds, something like that, they got them when they needed it the most. And I think that's the biggest thing for Texas here or for LSU, is if they are in this game, which I expect them to be, and they want to win this game, when will they get enough pressure on Ellinger? They will have to do it when they get it the most. It's going to have to make sure they do it at the appropriate times. If the offensive line doesn't live up to the hype, LSU is going to break through and make Ellinger's life really miserable the entire game. But will they make the play at the right times? Late in the fourth quarter, they get a sack and they need the ball back. That's what Auburn did against Oregon. There's a very good chance we could see that here on Saturday night. By far the best game. on Saturday. Number 6, number 9, a top 10 matchup. And I agree with you, Deep Barat, that Sam Ehlinger is better than Justin Herbert, but I do agree that both are two of the best quarterbacks in the entire nation. They're up there at elite status with those, along with Trevor Lawrence, Tua, Jake Fromm, guys like that. So we're going to go through the rest of these questions real quick. There's a couple of other comments before we wrap things up. Once again, I want to thank you guys for joining us today on this Tuesday afternoon. We're going to try to keep this as our normal day. That won't always be the case. That's why you need to check Twitter, the YouTube community post here. And if you sign up for our newsletter, you will know when we're going to do our live stream. So you actually know our entire posting schedule for the entire week, prepping you for every single week of college football. So if you're not signed up for any of those, or at least for the newsletter, make sure you get on that. The link's in the description below. Go to our website and sign up on that form. I can promise you, you're not going to want to miss out on any of the extra content that we bring to you across the board. So Christopher Smith, I hope you're still here. I promised you I would answer your question. I'm going to do that right now. My thoughts on Hilinski and South Carolina. What are my thoughts on that after Jake Bentley goes down with a foot injury that will keep him out indefinitely? Well, unfortunately, man, I tell you what, they've got Alabama in week 3. And I didn't think they were going to win with Jake Bentley. And I sure as heck can assure you they're not going to beat him with Hilinski now. But I do think he's a solid quarterback. I do think he's a very solid quarterback. He's young. There's a lot of potential there. And that's what Border Bob's actually saying right now. He may actually be a better quarterback. Muschamp is shaken to the core. Unless mediocre remains okay in Columbia, stay with Muschamp. And that's what you get. That's just his humble opinion. But Ryan Hilinski will be, I think, one of the better quarterbacks down the road in the SEC, down the road. Not now, not maybe next year, but soon he's going to be a very solid quarterback for the Gamecocks, assuming he, remains the starter down the road. He's just a freshman, if I'm not mistaken. I think South Carolina's season for bowl berth took a huge blow with the loss in North Carolina. That was a game they really needed to win. When you have the most difficult schedule in the entire nation, you have to win every one of those toss-up games or games that you were favored in. North Carolina was one of those. And that wasn't really a toss-up game, in my opinion. That was a game they were favored in, one that I thought they should take easy care of business, and they weren't able to. And I don't know if that is because South Carolina played poorly or because North Carolina is going to be better than we thought. Could be a mixture of both. But their bowl hopes took a deep blow after that loss to North Carolina. Now, I will say this. We had them at 7-5. So now with that, and one of those wins out of those 7 came against North Carolina. So right now, you take away one of those wins, you're down to 6. They're still bowl eligible. So all the wins that we have for South Carolina on our predictions, they got to win now if they want to go bowling. Because the ones that we have pegged as losses, I don't think will switch into wins. Those are games against Clemson and Alabama, and I think Texas A&M, Georgia, teams like that. I don't think are going to happen for the Gamecocks. Joe, love hearing your comments, man. He goes, ETN, Jonathan Taylor, you know my pick. Taylor alone wins 2 big games this year, and Nebraska will be one of them. And he's here to say that Wisconsin travels to Ohio State in Rocktober. And that is the game where Jonathan Taylor will win the Heisman over the likes of Trevor Lawrence and Tua Tagovailoa. You heard it here first at future ESPN star, college football analyst, the Gridiron Experts YouTube blog. And, man, I got to tell you what, love comments like that. So, Joe, always enjoy hearing from you. Good stuff. And I hope you are enjoying our expert picks if you signed up for those. Although you seem to be doing pretty well by yourself, 2-0 this past week, although we both got that Virginia game right. Jeff, who is the most overrated team right now, in my opinion? Right now, Auburn. Right now, it's Auburn. They don't deserve to be in the top 10. That's my honest opinion. And if you watched our week 1 recap, I kind of addressed that. Tomorrow, we're going to have our analysis out on the new AP Top 25 poll, and you'll get my analysis on that as well. My reasoning for why I don't think they should be in the top 10. But you beat the number 11 team in the country by 6. That's fantastic. But your quarterback, Bo Nix, did not play that well. And if anybody watched that game, everybody and their mother knows that Oregon lost that game. Auburn did not win it. Now, good teams have to take advantage of good opportunities. Good teams would have been able to win that game. So Oregon, unable to capitalize on that great punt return, unable to capitalize on a chip shot field goal or scoring a touchdown early in the fourth quarter, unable to make a better coaching decision instead of running it on 4th and 1 when everybody in the nation knew that they were going to run it on 4th and 1. Those are things that Oregon should have been able to handle better decisions, better decisions capitalizing off of those chances. They were not able to do that. But Auburn moved up 6 spots to number 10 in the country over the likes of Florida, Texas A&M, guys like that. It was an impressive win, don't get me wrong. But call me when Auburn beats those teams like Texas A&M and Florida. If they beat both those teams in the regular season, they're legit. But one win over Oregon, in my opinion, does not justify you to move up 10 spots to the number 10 spot in the nation. Auburn, in my opinion, is not a number 10 team in the country. It's not a top 10 team in the nation. Their defensive line is, but not the entire team. That's just my opinion. So that's my most overrated team. Who's my most underrated team? That's a great question, Jeff. There are so many that you could consider to be underrated based off of what we saw in week 1. I've got notes here right now trying to look at a team that I think could be considered underrated. Boston College is one, a team that I did not think would beat Virginia Tech in week 1, and they did. They've got a very solid chance to have a strong start to the season, potentially 3-0, 4-0, somewhere around there. So they do that. That'd be a strong start for Steve Adazio. They might finally win more than 7 games in a season. So maybe they're a little underrated. I still think, teams that I've got listed here, I still think that Iowa State could be a little underrated despite that horrible performance against Northern Iowa. Teams take a huge stride from week 1 to week 2. You can see a drastic difference in Iowa State come week 3 after a bye week when they face off against Iowa. So there's a handful of teams out there, so many that I can't even list them. But great questions, great questions. I add them in about my overrated, underrated. That's always a toss-up. Jeff Wilson, Utah or Washington, who's better? Right now, I believe, in my opinion, it is Utah. We have Utah beating Washington twice this season, in the regular season and in the conference championship game. That might not happen. They might lose in the regular season, but I do have Utah winning the Pac-12. That performance against BYU helped my case for them even more. And I really like this U squad this season. If they want to win the Pac-12 and maybe make a run at the college football playoff, this is the year they have to do it, assuming, of course, they can stay healthy. Yeah, Jeff, the poll did came out this afternoon. And make sure you stay tuned, man. We're going to have our analysis out on that tomorrow afternoon. So our top 25 analysis poll coming out on, what would that be, Wednesday now. Well, the days all got mixed up after the long Labor Day weekend. Ray believes UCF is underrated. I agree. I could see that. Maybe not so much, though, because they are the number 18 team in the country. But, if they beat Stanford, they can start making their case once again for a New Year's Six bowl game appearance. So that is something to keep in mind. Boise State, even, the team that's always in the rankings and always in contention for a New Year's Six bowl game, but doesn't always get the attention they deserve. And our last 2 comments here, Hunter5657, glad to have you, man. We were just wrapping up, but as I always say, better late than never. We did miss you last week, as DM would say, or as he did say right there. We did miss you last week, so we'll definitely make sure to catch you next week. Hunter, if you haven't signed up, go sign up for our newsletter, man. I want to make sure you're here for these live streams, so if you do that, you'll always know when we're going to go live. You always know. So if you want to do that, that would be awesome. We definitely missed you, but glad you were able to come in just for a little bit. And our final question here, Ray7337, always good to hear from you, Ray. What do I think of Notre Dame? Ray, I'm sure you were a little nervous. I was a little nervous last night after the poor start from Notre Dame. Great opening drive. Their defense just couldn't get anything going. That was the issue for Notre Dame. But then they ended up stepping up, especially in the second half. 3 consecutive fumbles. That was ridiculous. Louisville fumbles, Notre Dame fumbles, Louisville fumbles again. So that game could have been a little bit closer than the 35-17 score that was. But I like this Notre Dame team. I like Ian Book at quarterback. I love him at quarterback, actually. I think one of the better quarterbacks to come through Notre Dame in a long time. They had Everett Golson a while ago. They had Brandon Wimbush fairly recently. But Ian Book is the type of quarterback that Notre Dame needs. And proved that he had some wheels last night, had a bit of mobility last night against the Cardinals. So he looks extremely good, except for that one pass where he hit the cheerleader. But besides that, he does look good. And I like this Notre Dame team a lot. Paul Feinbaum came out and said that Notre Dame should never be allowed in the college football playoff ever again. Paul Feinbaum doesn't know what he's talking about. Said it right there, right here on the Gridiron Expert. Paul Feinbaum does not know what he's talking about. I'm sure he's just a little more bitter after that Tennessee loss. Had to find someone to take his anger out on. But regardless, Notre Dame does deserve to be in the playoff, especially if they run the table and go 12-0. You tell me if you beat Michigan, Georgia, and Stanford, yeah, you're in. Even if you go 11-1, you can make the case for Notre Dame to get in, depending on who that one loss is to. As long as it's to Georgia or Michigan, you're fine. All those games on the road, too, which gives you even more stock when the college football playoff rankings are released. So, Hunter, glad to see you've got post notifications on. So that's good. That's just as well, just as good. So you'll always be able to catch up when we're going live. So super happy that you've got that. Like I said, sorry you missed the bulk of it today, but we'll make sure to catch you next time. Absolutely. Make sure you call in too. We loved hearing from you the first time. Would love and the multiple times after that. Would love to hear from you again. Well, guys, we're going to wrap things up. We've been going for over an hour 40 now, so longer than we expected, but I'm always happy to do that. And when we're talking about college football with you guys, it can't get any better. And this is actually kind of the first live stream that we've ever done middle of the season. You know, we didn't do many last year, if at all. We kind of started this in the off season. So you can expect more of these as the season goes on. It actually gives us some legit stuff to talk about. And I couldn't ask for anything better. So thank you guys so much for joining us. DM, thank you for joining us. Dark and Rutgers land. It's getting dark where I'm at too. I guess that's what you get when you go for almost 2 hours. So thank you for joining us. Always happy when you hear Ray, same to you, Emperor of Rome, Comic Dude 45, Tef, as always, Fresno State impressed me as well, nearly beating USC. So thank you for joining us there. Hope you enjoy our expert picks that come out on Wednesday. Anybody else I'm forgetting? James Scott, Jeff Wilson, Hunter, of course, all of you guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Stay tuned for the rest of the week. We have content coming out to you nonstop Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and, of course, all-day football on Saturday. Things can't get any better. It's that time of year. We couldn't be happier. I know you guys couldn't be either. So thank you guys once again for joining us. We'll see you next time here on the Gridiron Expert. You guys have a safe rest of the night.